Hello and welcome to the Chess Pit, the live stream where three guys talk about chess occasionally, and I occasionally forget the words. I'm John Mackenzie, and I'm joined, it's nice to see, by three of us today, joined by two, that there are three of us. Phil, back from his
Hello.
jollies. How are you?
I'm all right. Yeah, a good weekend in Glasgow. Got back before Storm Barra, so I've managed to go to Glasgow in between the two enormous storms, which was very nice.
And Robin, how are you?
Yeah, better than Jan Nepomniachtchi.
He's just come across Storm Magnus, I suppose, or maybe Storm in a Nepo. But I guess that remains to be seen.
Storm punching yourself in the face.
Yeah. Who wants to talk this one through? Phil, let's hear your take on this game. What on earth went on?
I thought the first couple of hours were very interesting indeed. I think that Magnus played a very unusual line, 3d4, but it kind of made it into sort of like a weird reti. And Nepo, yeah, it was a good choice. I mean, I've talked a bit about Karpov-Kasparov matches in the past, and it reminded me of, I think it was it 1987? Kasparov needed to win the last one there to tie the match, and that's when they had the current champion would have draw odds in the match. I think he had to win to make it 12-12, and he chose 1c4, so it was evocative of that. And yeah, Nepo got a very reasonable position, and yeah, it was still some interest in it, though Magnus did start to take over after 20 or so moves. But then, I mean, what can we say? It's just this horrific blunder that is, and this big picture of Magnus just sitting there for 15 minutes, having made the correct response to take advantage of the blunder to trap Nepo's bishop on b7. And Nepo was 15 minutes doing what we don't know. Maybe his eyes were a bit crinkly when he came back. I did wonder whether he got a bit emotional, but it's really sad. And yeah, this match is, if it wasn't over already, it certainly is now. 3 ahead with 5 to play. There's going to be no Jean van der Velders here.
Where does this rank in terms of like World Championship blunders? Because obviously it's not like a blunder as in what I would call a blunder in my games, which is just hanging a piece in a stupid fashion.
I don't know. I think the one yesterday people said was the day before yesterday people said it was a blunder, and it was a little tactic. But I mean, he's effectively hung a piece there, right?
Yeah, I suppose so. But it's not a sort of like prima facie blunder, is it? It's not like, oh, that's a really stupid move. Well, I mean, I guess it is, but like, in terms of where does this rank amongst the sort of blunders that we've seen in the past in World Championships?
Well, I mean, it's evocative of Fischer-Spassky game
1.
2.
Game 1.
It was effectively game 2, wasn't it? Because he didn't turn up for the first one.
No, game. He played game 1 and then he didn't turn up for game 2.
Okay, that was it. Where Fischer takes a hot pawn on h2 and then another pawn move to block the bishop is happening. I think it's up there.
I mean,
despite John saying it's just not hanging a piece, it kind of just is at this level.
Yeah.
On paper, Fischer still could have drawn that game 1 if he had played accurately later on. Whereas this one, once that had happened, there was just no way back into the game. I mean, like if you talk about the hanging a piece is kind of like the evaluation is sort of like, like more than a piece, right? Because there's also no there's no like compensation that he can get for either. He's like losing the piece and his position is crap without that bishop. Like his advantage there was like Carlsen's bishop was kind of his worst piece in that position, and it just kind of changed. There was nothing from there as well. I after this Queen E1 move, which I think Magnus had overlooked, I felt like the game was White was at least equal, and maybe his position was a tiny, had won a pawn for a bit of compensation and stuff. And with the time, you felt like, I don't know, Nepo should have just held it. If he just held it together, right, like he's absolutely fine. It's just it's such a shame that this is clearly what we're not really viewing is like a game between Magnus and Nepo anymore. We're kind of just watching Magnus and this guy pushing wood.
Yeah, and we've got plenty of people in the chat chiming in. Matt Fletcher, ouch, which I think is a fair enough summary of what's just happened. Duncan, hey chaps, what a surprise, eh? And then Hugh O'Connor says hi, but he says, can we interrupt the chess to congratulate avid listener and erstwhile student of Phil, John Gallagher, on becoming a father? We can. Congratulations, John. Apparently his son was born just after the epic game on Friday. Politely waited until Nepo resigned. So welcome to the world.
Like we did today.
Yeah, exactly. Welcome to the world, Magnus Gallagher, I suppose. But yeah, Matt also mentions...
No, tragically, he's called Jan. It's horribly wrong.
Jan Gallagher. Yeah, Matt mentions Chigorin Steinitz game 23. And the blunder is 32, bishop b4 in a winning position, hangs mate in 2.
Yeah, that was the one that Geary said on commentary. He likened it to that. Yeah, Chigorin Steinitz. It's
a long time ago.
Yeah.
Chigorin has a variation named after him, as does, I presume, Steinitz, which means that they're very old.
It's not even really a variation. It's like a whole defense.
Yeah, true. Let's rather than just sort of descend straight into the what on earth is going on with Jan line of discussion, which I think we will get to. But what did you make of the game before the blunder? Was it? I mean, it looked as though Nepomniachtchi came out of the opening quite well. Maybe sort of ceded a little ground in the middle game. But where do you think it was heading? Just another solid draw?
I think it was very double-edged. There was a bit of dynamism, different pawn structures, different pieces. We had this. You could tell by Geary's tone on the commentary that he was pretty impressed with Nepo's prep and the way that, it would have been the biggest shame, I think, from this game is that we didn't get what would have been a time scramble from a reasonably level position for Magnus around the time control, because he was behind on time. Before the blunder, he had 15 odd minutes for 15 moves or something. It would have been close. It would have been similar to game 6 where that happened. It's that's the biggest shame from today. We didn't really get to see Magnus trying to deal with a very large time deficit around the time control. It would have been added that little bit extra spice to it. And in the end, he's made his 40th move with 3 minutes to spare, which frankly at this level is plenty. But the game itself, the very interesting opening, lots of little bits and pieces, which I think it's one of these games that I don't think is necessarily so accessible to weaker players. There's a lot going on, and hopefully AN famous favorite streamer of yours should be able to dissect it better than we can in an accessible way. But there was a lot happening, and it was interesting seeing. I was watching the deep dive on Chess24 and Geary and Polgar disagreeing on assessments at various points. What we've had mostly this match is lots of agreement on, Carlsen's slightly better, but it's tricky, or it's just dead level, or Nepo's making it tricky, but Magnus should defend. There was some dynamism in not just the moves themselves and the positions, but the commentary as well. And it's just, that was why it was so out of the blue as well for me, because it happened when Geary and Polgar were looking down this line of, well, maybe Magnus might have some problems to solve here, and then it just happens, and boom, and that's it. And that's the not just the game, but the match.
How much do you think that Nepo will be kicking himself because it seemed as though his strategy was to play fairly quickly and force time trouble onto Magnus? And to what extent do you feel as though that maybe shot him in the foot? Maybe that made him more likely to blunder? I've just noticed Duncan's asked this question in the chat. So it looks like I've just stolen it from you, Duncan. But what do you guys make of that?
This game was a bit different to game 8. I felt in that game 8, Nepo seemed to be a bit out of sorts and playing quite weirdly anyway. Even before this blunder, right? This this h5, rook h6 stuff, king f8 was a bit, like seemed a bit like he was chasing shadows somewhat, and that he was, and he didn't have his kind of, he wasn't sort of thinking sort of A implies B kind of thing. He had kind of mixing up plans and stuff, and just wasn't really there. Whereas today he played quite well, I would say. It was an interesting opening, and he got like a decent position, and then it was fair. It was very equal at the point when it happened. But you felt like with the time scramble aspect, like there could have been something happen there. It would have been interesting again. See, had game 8 not happened the way it had that been a draw, I think game 9 might have played out differently in terms of the speed of his play today. He was obviously trying to play quickly, but he spent 4 minutes on that move, c5, and that would be like in 4 minutes, right? The speed at which they calculate, like that would be the first thing you would look at. I think that c6 move, right, to like get the bishop trap there. I know it seems like something that for an amateur player, it looks like I overlook stuff like that all the time, but I mean that's more. They play. Nepo's unlikely to do that in a blitz game where he's got 4 minutes in total. So I don't think that he was obviously playing quickly, but it wasn't just that he was playing quickly. He was thinking with haste, but not speed, if that makes sense. He was overlooking stuff. Geary said his sense of danger is just gone right now. He's just which suggests he wasn't totally there, which is unfortunate, because it seemed like he had sort of pulled himself together for this match, right? And even if I think it would, as much as the match was kind of gone anyway, I think that he would still, I don't know, he'll look back with it and it would regret that he didn't, pull himself together and at least half out, or, at least not do anything like that right now. This will just be looked back on as Nepo just completely falling to bits after game 6. He's gone on to lose 2 of the next 3 games, including one with White, both of them based on just terrible blunders and stuff. It's sad. I think this is obviously the biggest moment of his career, right? He's and to have sort of put so much effort, I guess, to sort of refocus himself on chess and to get to this point and then be exposed. But it shows that whatever sort of advisors or people you have around that can help you a certain degree with improving your sort of mentality and your focus and stuff like that, ultimately they're not playing the games for you. And
and your haircut. Yeah. Turned up with a very sharp new haircut today. So
I guess it's worth saying at this point that Kasparov obviously went 5 games down in his first World Championship game. There's definitely like first time phenomena going on here, I think. But maybe we should talk a little bit about Magnus in terms of the time pressure stuff as well, because everyone was talking about that, but Magnus was still happy to just take his time and risk going close to that time scramble, because he was willing to make sure he was in a position, I guess, where he could survive that time scramble. So how would you compare the two, Phil, in terms of the way that they approach time in this game?
I think Magnus was always fine. I mean, it's not like he had 45 seconds for 15 moves. He had 15 minutes, or what was it? He had 17 at the time of the blunder. He would have had 17 minutes for 14 moves. That's quite doable, and it's quite standard actually at this level. So I'd come at it from the angle that Magnus did everything quite standardly, but it's Nepo. Yeah, he's applying psychological pressure by playing quicker, but clearly he's not using his time properly, and he didn't in game 8 either. He's just, he didn't really. If you're going to play moves like King F8 and Queen D8 and all of this stuff, you need to have at least appeared to have bothered to look and calculate. Whereas this is just an aberration. I think what probably happened is that he just completely forgot that the pawn on C5 blocks the knight's square to defend it. It's just a forgetting thing in this calculation rather than not seeing it. I think he obviously saw it, but just then forgot and played it anyway. Better players than me can talk about the dynamic of blundering and the reasons for it. Part of
I
it
can
would
also
have
talk
been
about blundering with quite a huge amount of depth of knowledge. But
part of it would have been him. If Magnus, I reckon this blunder doesn't happen if Magnus also has 54 minutes.
Yeah.
I don't think he plays C5. I think he part of it is he's trying to put Magnus under pressure and has just blundered in doing so.
When you know your worst, but your opponent's down on time, it's so tempting to just start playing quickly and play the clock, not the man. But that's maybe it'll probably work fairly effective for you at sometimes at club level. But Magnus knows what he's doing, right? And I think his decision to play slowly, well, not slowly per se, but just to not be fazed by that, I think it shows his level of match play experience and his inner belief in his ability to calculate and to understand positions and that sort of long investment on moves early on is him also really gaining an understanding of the position which he can then use to play quicker later, right? Like you can't, if you think a long time and play the right move, you can always put yourself in a good position. Then it's much easier to find the moves later. Whereas if you play too quickly and make a blunder like that, you can't undo it. You can make up for having played slowly earlier by playing quicker later, but you can't take back moves if you make the wrong ones. And it's such a and like I said, Nepo didn't blitz that move out. He took 4 minutes over it. That's like a reasonable thing. There were lots. It wasn't like he had to find an only move at that stage, right? There were lots of things he could have done there as well. So it's just, as Phil says, a complete aberration.
Yeah, I know that Phil has to rush off. So let's talk a little bit about what the match looks like from here on in. Like, what do we see from Nepo now? Is it just going to be wild stuff?
I think that's, well, clearly the match is over. Whether we even get to have I don't know. I mean, how many we've got? 5 left. He's 3 down. So we're definitely going to get a game.
3 more games.
We're definitely going to get one on Friday. We may not get one on Saturday. Magnus may just scoot up and win the lot now. I suspect we'll just get tomorrow. We might see Nepo just going for broke with black with a Sicilian. Maybe he's now going to play some or Sicilian or. I don't know, just something where he can just put some psychological pressure again on Magnus, like he's done frankly most of the games in the opening, and get some time pressure with a dynamic position. I still think he might lose tomorrow as a result. And then Friday, Magnus will have white again. It's very plausible that Magnus just wins from here, and then that's it. And he's 5 ahead with 3 to play on Friday, and then we can have the weekend off. I think it's very plausible. Very plausible. Magnus Magnus, we showed it today in the game. Like Knight takes G3 in a position where he's already winning, spending most of his remaining time calculating this line where he doesn't need to take this extra pawn, but he realizes that he can. He's just eking out every single little bit from an advantageous position, like he did on Friday. And it's he's not going to just want to halve out from here if the opportunities present themselves. He would take that. He would take halving out such that on Saturday that's it. But I suspect that Nepo will have to play quite resourcely over the next couple of games, and that may well result in Magnus winning this, whatever it would be, 9-3. 8-3.
Yeah, well, no, he can't get to. Yeah, he can't get to. Actually, what is it? 6-3 now. So
it would be 9-3. Yeah.
Well, no, because if he won game 11, surely he would just be 8-3 up, and that's the end, right? It's out of 14.
Oh yeah, sure. Sorry, you're right. Yeah, beg your pardon. 8-3.
So yeah, if he wins, he's 6-3 up. So if he wins, tomorrow.
I know numbers.
I would never mess up the numbering of the potential wins, losses in a World Championship game. Robin, what about Magnus? Like, how does Magnus approach this now? Does he?
I think I think that he just will be. He's initially going to be like feeling, a bit bad for Nepo and surprised and stuff, but he'll get over it and he'll come to the board like he always does tomorrow. I just don't, he's just a consummate professional, right? And where everything that we could say about sort of what's obviously happened to Nepo in terms of the sort of psychological meltdown, and is exactly the opposite of what we see from Magnus. He's so stoic, and he just plays in like that sort of machine-like fashion. He won't go easy on Nepo. and stuff. But at the same time, he won't be over pressing or take dubious risks because he thinks that he can. He will just go out and he will just try and play the best move in every position. He will use his clock well. He will do everything that has made him world champion 4 times in a row so far, about to be 5 times. So I really feel sympathy for Jan now having to play the rest of this game against Magnus, because it just must feel like the last thing you'd want to do when you feel like you just can't play properly is to go out and have to play the best player probably of all time. It's also
go
on.
I was just going to say the part of the problem as well is that it's like cumulative in terms of Magnus will now feel more and more comfortable. He will probably sleep better tonight. He won't he won't be as stressed. He'll start finding moves easier, no doubt, because he was very honest about saying that he feels exhausted, and his mantra has been, yeah, but it's worse for him vis-a-vis Nepo. So he's definitely been under it, and that game 6 hit him as much as it hit Nepomniachtchi. I think it's worth saying that, but I think from here on in now he can just start relaxing and get to a point where he's going to be fresher and fresher. So I think that probably comes into it as well. Right, one final question, I guess, before we close. Look, Magnus is going for 2,900. What impact is that going to have? This going to have on that?
He's now gaining rating points from the match, which is wild. He's clearly not. I think we can reasonably say Magnus is not at the peak of his power. Certainly not today. Today, Nepo lost, but there is obviously a massive gulf between Magnus and Nepo. Not necessarily in ability, but in these situations, in coping and match play. And also just the pressure moments and just generally trying to be the best in the world. Nepo is nowhere near.
It's a shame that, because obviously Magnus had this sort of slight monkey on his back about not having won a game at the 2018 championships in the classical period, and to a degree, well, he sort of got that off his back with game 6, which was a terrific win and stuff. But then I hope that doesn't get lost in the sort of Nepo's then subsequent collapse, because it maybe just be viewed as, well, Nepo just wasn't really up to it, and so it doesn't really count, right? Like, when's Magnus going to get a win against the sort of true kind of like serving contender, which I think is the wrong view to take of it. Clearly, Nepo still has psychological barriers, I guess, that he has to overcome to compete at this level, and stand a chance of actually winning a match. But he is up until the point at which he lost game 6, he was acquitting himself extremely well, and had been before that Magnus is equal in all the games so far. So it is a very unique circumstance that one can never really understand how prepared you kind of need to be, or whether you do or don't have the required level of fortitude until you're there, right? You can't. It's on paper it's meaningless.
Yeah, no, of course, and we'll be back again tomorrow to cover the next game. Hopefully we will have a bit more of a positive game to cover. It's weird, I think, going into the next games, it's almost as though we just want to see a good game of chess out with the context of World Chess Championship standing. So hopefully we'll have a good game of chess to talk about tomorrow. Phil, good to have you back.
Thank you.
I guess you'll be on again tomorrow. I think we'll see. I'm sure we'll all be on tomorrow if we've got the time, depending on the game as well, how long it takes to get done. But again, thank you to everyone in the chat. It's great having you on board when we're chatting these things, and hopefully see you again tomorrow. But until tomorrow, we will be off and enjoying ourselves this evening. So goodbye to everyone.